Hello and welcome back to Ideology Explained. Today we're talking about capitalism. You can already tell that the name of this series doesn't mean anything anymore because, and this is true, capitalism is not an ideology but an economic system. And before you rush to the comment section, I am aware that capitalism is part of many ideologies, but it itself isn't one. So let's go over the basics. In general, capitalism is just an economic system in which the means of production are owned by private individuals. Means of production is a Marxist term and just means the things you need to work, like a PC if you're an author or industrial machinery if you produce, dildos. And what does that private ownership mean? Classically, it just means that it's not owned by the state or by the crown, but by whoever bought it. That means you can buy a piece of land and build a factory there and it belongs to you. And all of the profit it generates belongs to you as well, minus stuff like taxes. And that's it according to some definitions, but others put an emphasis on competition and such, which I disagree with. This is because nowadays capitalism has become synonymous with free market capitalism. And free market capitalism means an economic system made up of both the free market and capitalism. Personally, I believe that it's important to distinguish between those two. The distinction I make is that capitalism dictates how things are produced, for example in a factory which is owned by a single private individual or a group of investors. So capitalism is the system of production, it produces things. And the market is a system of distribution, which transports stuff from the factories that produce it to the people who need it. I will not dwell on how markets work because that's actually a separate video already. Click somewhere. You need both a system of distribution and a system of production to make a full economic system. And I believe this distinction is important because if you mix them up, then you can make some silly mistakes like believing that market socialism is the same as capitalism because it has competing businesses. I just think that keeping the market and capitalism separate makes it easier to understand things. So that's the theory. Capitalism is just a system in which everything is produced and owned by private entities. But how does that work in praxis? How do I get to own this piece of land and how can I make sure nobody else takes it? That's the job of the state. The state is a core feature of capitalism because it is the entity that enforces property rights. Practically, that means you can buy a piece of land and you will receive a piece of paper that says that it's your land. And if someone else comes along and tries to take your land, then you call the police and they commit war crimes on the people who are trespassing. Using tear gas is a war crime, look it up. This also has the effect that someone can own a factory and all the machines therein and have the full dictatorial power over the people who work there. And if they try to do anything against it, you can call the police and have them arrest the workers. And this is the very first criticism of capitalism. It allows single people to take control of factories which may affect thousands of lives, and businesses which may affect billions of people. An employee pretty much has to do as an employer tells them to, or else become unemployed. Needless to say, anarchists have a very big problem with that. Another criticism of capitalism is the tendency towards monopoly. If you've ever played Monopoly, you know what I mean. This has many negative effects like increasing wealth inequality between workers and employers and preventing the founding of new businesses, which would treat the workers better. Capitalism also leads to rent keeping. Someone owns land by some means and then charges other people for living there. Of course, these people have no choice but to pay since they need a home. According to some economic and philosophical theories, this is fundamentally unjust and exploitative. And if we are going to use Marxism, the same goes for all those capitalist businesses. In Marxism, they're all seen as exploitative for reasons that are too complicated to explain in this short video. Click the link over here, that should give you a good overview. There are more criticisms of capitalism, which I personally name, and I have another video on those, so go there and watch that. Now you should be aware of what capitalism is, why it's useful to separate it from the market, and some of the most common criticisms. Thanks for watching, see ya! Extra special thanks to Darius the Bird, Noah, The Doctor, Tortoise, Aaron J. Patton, Generkis77, Morally Conflicted Tortoise, Tyler Dang, Klastrup, and Spear for your generous donations.